Welcome, welcome, welcome!
You guys ready to party?
I said, are you ready to party?
I need to know if I can start the party.
You know what? Start the party.
Did Michael give you permission to do this?
Start the party.
So as we all know, that I'm the host of this podcast.
Right. But, I mean, you're the host, but I'm the assistant host.
Assistant to the host.
Right, the assistant host.
Assistant to the host. It's a lower position.
Well, I mean, I think we should both be hosts.
Why do you say that?
Well, we both have a microphone.
Uh-huh.
We both speak equally. I think it's kind of selfish of you to think that you are the host and I'm just an assistant to the host.
Well, I don't know. When you really think about it, it's like I'm the one who has all the technology. Like, I edit the podcast, so clearly I have higher up. You only make the thumbnail, so it's just kind of... I feel like I'm more qualified to be the host, and you're more qualified to be assistant to the host.
Well, okay, this is true. I think you take on maybe some more responsibilities than me, but I am also contributing. I'm not just... here's what I think. I think let's just agree that I am assistant to the... Or no, I'm assistant host.
I see what you did there. You already gave up your title because you are assistant to the host.
No, that's
Yes.
not what happened.
Yes.
That's not what happened.
Yes, that's exactly what
No,
happened.
it's not.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So assistant host.
Agree to disagree. So today we're talking about the Alliance,
The Alliance.
which is... I think it's a very Dwight heavy episode.
It is. We get a lot more insight into his character, I feel like.
Which is weird because we haven't written down a whole lot about what he does in this episode. Because it's not super, I guess, insightful.
Yeah.
It's more just, this is what he's becoming.
Yeah, and I had a lot of questions raised about Dwight in this episode, though. Especially, he seems to be the most concerned about the downsizing.
Yes.
And he seems most threatened about being fired,
Yeah.
which is really surprising to me.
I mean, that's what they open with, which is, I don't know. I found it very interesting how he needs validation from Michael on his position in the company and if he's for sure going to stay, because he feels like he is, but he needs the validation to make sure.
I could see that.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what he asked in the opening of the episode, is he abruptly assaults Michael as he gets out of the bathroom. And
Right.
It's just like, so with the downsizing, I'm not getting let go, right?
There's not going to be downsizing Dwight. But it's weird that he's so... I still think it's weird. I understand that he needs validation, but if we look at it objectively, he probably is the top salesman,
Yeah.
and he devotes majority of his life to the company. I guess it's just weird that he is afraid that he's going to be fired.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I don't know. It almost makes you think that he puts on this facade of, I'm very secure in my position and I know exactly what I'm doing, but it reveals a bit more of an insecurity that even when he is doing everything that he possibly can, even more than he probably should, he still feels like he's not doing enough.
Yeah, he doesn't feel like he's quite good enough. Which is weird. It's so weird to analyze their characters, and when you look for character flaws that they have, they become obvious.
Yeah.
But it's only when you look at them, because I never realized anything like that about Dwight, because he's always seemed so sure of himself, and I wouldn't have guessed that he would be insecure, especially about something that he seems so confident about.
Yeah. I think starting this podcast has made me, because we're analyzing it so much, it's definitely a realization of exactly how in-depth these characters are, even with just the smallest inklings of something lying beneath.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it's like a hint of something, or a whisper.
Yeah.
There's nothing pointing to it. And granted, we could be making the wrong judgment in our analysis, but from our conversations and sort of the evidence we point to, they're fairly validated.
Yeah. But it's weird because with this one, with Dwight, there's not a lot of evidence that suggests to it in other circumstances.
Right.
Because I think we've talked about this before. The first season is very much they're working on their characters and they're not fully fleshed out.
True.
Except for Michael-ish and Jim and Pam. I feel like those are the three main ones they have an idea set for who they are.
Yeah, it seems like they have the most foundation set.
Yeah. I think the only thing that really changes with Michael's personality, at least until he meets people that push him to be different, is just how he looks. Because they had a certain idea and then they wanted to change it.
Right.
But yeah, with this Dwight scenario of him showing a sense of weakness in his job is very, I don't know. Because I'm thinking of ideas of when he's been weak, and that's mostly when Angela has broken up with him.
True.
He has like that kind of weakness to him on an emotional level. But I can't think of a lot of instances where it's a job insecurity. Except maybe like when Michael's gone and then Charles in charge.
Oh, that's true.
And he doesn't know his footing anymore because he had this very...
He almost had his identity all set out.
Yeah.
But it shifted a lot once Michael wasn't in the office anymore.
Yeah. So it almost makes me wonder if Dwight's more curious about Michael's position. Because if Michael's out of the picture...
What does that mean for Dwight?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing to point out. Because it does seem like Dwight's identity is based on Michael. Not in every way, but
Yeah.
a lot of it, especially his work life.
Yeah.
He's sort of filled in all the empty spaces in Michael's character.
Yeah. Because the only reason he would be concerned about it is if he's not going to be the next manager. Because that's the only time when he's been okay with Michael being gone. But even then, it's almost Michael still needs to be here, but I want to be in charge instead of him.
Yeah, it's weird. I think that might be... This fear of the downsizing is probably related to his fear of losing his identity if he didn't work there.
Yeah.
Because so much of his life revolves around Dunder Mifflin and Michael that if that was taken away from him, he would probably be severely depressed and wouldn't know who he was anymore.
Because you think of when I can't remember what episode it is, but when Dwight leaves and works at Staples instead, it does feel like he's lost a lot of what he's built his life around.
Yeah.
Because he has to wear a different kind of uniform, and the coworkers that he's talking to, just like, he doesn't have any kind of connection with them, whether it's negative or positive. It's just very mundane and dull. And yeah, so I think it's not really his insecurity of the job itself, but the insecurity of the company, and that it's not as strong as he wanted it to be or worked for it to be. And I don't know, it is odd that it comes off as him not feeling good enough in a way, where I don't want to say he like blames himself for the company lacking, but maybe just that his branch in general.
Yeah, maybe he takes it personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the other thing about Dwight. He is almost like a ghost manager, because Michael does give him a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah.
Just without any of the titles. Because anything that Michael thinks would make the other employees angry towards him, he just shoves it off to Dwight.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that would be major responsibilities of a manager, you know? That would involve a lot of tasks that you as a manager would have to do.
Yeah, if you think about it, they've had two managers this entire time.
That's
and
true.
even when they get Jim and Michael to both be managers, it's like they've already had two managers.
So true. Yeah. So they really just made three.
Yeah.
When they made Jim a manager.
The trifecta. But that also makes me think of, I feel like not only Dwight is scared of being out of the loop, but also Michael is. So they have this yin-yang
codependency
complexity to them, where they both have kind of the same drive, but it leads them in different directions, where Michael wants to be very rich and be able to leave this job someday and be very charitable and just loving and
donate a hospital wing.
yeah. And Dwight, on the other hand, is someone who is he's already kind of a rich man. And yet his only drive is just making this company that he's working for better. And Michael doesn't exactly care if the company fails or not, but as long as, I think it just kind of goes hand in hand with his goals that the company does need to succeed for him to be a successful man.
Right. I can see that. I think also a part of that is Michael, he may not be completely concerned about the success of the branch, but he's certainly concerned about his employees and their well-being.
That's the thing, yeah.
He cares more about that. I think Dwight is more concerned with the infrastructure of the company and like the numbers. So I also had another thought while you were saying that Dwight might be this concerned because Michael isn't obvious that he's concerned, but he's clearly concerned about the branch.
Yeah.
And he's not so concerned about the actual branch, but the people inside of it. And I think Dwight sees that, but he thinks that it's about the numbers and making sure that they don't downsize at all.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I just wanted to lead into that with Dwight moving the water cooler towards him.
Yeah.
Because it's another very Dwight moment where he takes his own water bottle to work, so he doesn't need.
He's self-sufficient. Yeah.
But it's weird because I kind of relate to him on this level where he wants to be in the know of everything. He wants to be included in conversations, but no one does because he's not very approachable and he doesn't hang out by the water cooler.
Right.
And I don't know, it's just, I find it so intriguing how he just moves the water cooler closer to him just to be, because I think he wants to be more like Michael, where he actually cares about these people, but he's just not in tune with that part of everything.
Yeah, I think so. And I took note of that, him moving the water cooler, because it gives a lot of insight into his character.
Yeah.
Because he's willing to manipulate his environment so that it will benefit him. Whereas, I mean, we've talked about this with Jim a lot, but Jim wouldn't do something like that. He would either just stay at his desk or try to approach them. But Dwight is willing to, manipulate his surroundings so that he can get the most out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because with people like Jim, he's a very, I wouldn't say he's super extroverted, but he definitely has like an approachable personality, and he's not afraid to approach his coworkers because he's been there long enough to know, even if it's just mundane conversation, like when they're talking about sandwiches and bread and all that, like they still have what seems like an intriguing conversation, at least for a small blip in time.
They have really good bread.
Their bread is very good.
Is that pastrami?
And I guess since we're talking about that scene, I just wanted to go over Kevin as well. Just it's not a whole, I don't know. I just want to bring up Kevin just to document his mental state.
Just kind of track his progress.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's still nothing that really gives off a idiotic personality yet.
That's true.
There's not much I have to add on that, but I don't know, it's still mind-boggling to me how much it changes.
It is.
Yeah.
And yeah, he still has sort of this identity of an average Joe, sort of. Yeah, but is definitely competent. Which, again, it goes away. Yeah. And who knows where that goes. Yeah. I wonder why Dwight asks Jim to be in an alliance. Yeah. It just seems out of character.
I agree. Yeah. I don't know, I'm trying to think of, because he knows what Jim does, and he even has like an interview off time with the camera where he's saying, do I trust Jim? Yeah, like just all that. And it's, I can't think, because you'd say he'd alliance with Michael, but I think he also has just a little underlying thought of conspiracy where Michael is involved with corporate, and so he has to keep things on the down low. So I'd think he'd go more towards Ryan.
Yeah, it does seem like he would approach Ryan.
Because he doesn't like Ryan all that much. And in a later season, Dwight and Ryan do like a little alliance thing. But I guess it's not really showcased yet, but Michael does have an affinity towards Ryan. So I feel like Dwight would want to use that to his advantage. That's so true. Ryan could get information out of Michael.
You could be in good graces with Michael's favorite.
Yeah.
So if you're tied to Michael's favorite, your chances of being let go are a lot less.
I'm now thinking maybe that is why he chose Jim, because Ryan hasn't really been established as that yet. True. So what if Jim was probably Ryan, like the Ryan type before Ryan came in? Yeah, that's the only thing that I can really pinpoint, because obviously Dwight doesn't say, you should go talk to Michael about all these stuff, but I feel like he has this weird, diagram of, so Jim is kind of Michael's favorite, and Pam has information, and Jim talks to Pam all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That would make more sense if...
Yeah, and I mean, we don't really see all of the information that Dwight wants Jim to, like who he wants Jim to approach. But I think that is also another aspect, is Jim is very approachable. And not a lot of the other people in the office are, because if I'm thinking about it, the only like approachable person is Michael, but most people don't even want to approach him.
Right.
Mostly he approaches other people. Because everyone else in the office is very subdued, and
they would probably say no.
Yeah.
If he asked them.
And obviously the relationship between Dwight and Angela hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. So again, yeah, I think it's mostly just an elimination aspect. And he's just like, well, I know Jim is the worst, and he'll probably use this against me, but what other choice do I have?
It's the only option. I see him back at Shrew Farms just calculating this on a big whiteboard, just trying to figure out.
Moses sitting in the corner, and he's like talking to him through it.
Yeah. But the only thing I found of maybe why Dwight chose Jim is at the end, I think he's the last one being interviewed with his hair bleach blonde. It's like the last interview with Dwight of the episode. And he says, get what you can out of someone and then crush them. Yeah. And the only thing I was mostly confused about is what is he getting out of Jim in that? And maybe his main motivation was to get information through Pam.
Yeah.
Maybe.
What if he pre-calculated this entire episode and he knew exactly what would happen? He knew that Jim would take it too far, and then Roy
That's true, yeah.
What if, oh my gosh, what if Dwight told Jim like right before 5, and then he knew that Jim would approach Pam and Roy would come upstairs?
I have no idea what you're talking about. That'd be funny. Maybe Dwight does get back at Jim.
Yeah.
But just in crazy ways.
Because if you think about it, I feel like an office is very patternized, where things happen at a almost timely basis on the day-to-day. Mm-hmm. So, and we know Roy comes up often, right. Either for lunch or to pick her up, Pam. Yeah. Pick her up after work. So I love this thought of Dwight pre-calculated this entire episode.
This is a great conspiracy theory. What if through the whole show, Dwight was always trying to calculate on how to get back at Jim, and he recognizes the pettiness of Jim's pranks, and he wants to actually get back at Jim, to actually attack his life in any way.
When Dwight's asking Jim why he's talking to Pam, it's this very... I kind of viewed it as Jim explaining himself to Dwight about being around Pam. Mm-hmm. It's also giving an excuse to himself. And he's like, we're going to be chatting and giggling, right, and you just need to ignore it. The more I'm thinking about like this conspiracy of the whole thing, it just... I don't know. Just Dwight being like, I know Jim's going to approach Pam because I've seen them chatting and giggling. Mm-hmm. Like, I know...
And he probably knows that Jim's going to tell Pam.
Mm-hmm. Because I feel like the entire office kind of has an inkling of Jim's real intentions towards Pam. Mm-hmm. Because no one else really talks to each other.
Yeah, it's probably pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just sitting there trying to get through your 9 to 5 and you're zoned out to everything else. But something that doesn't happen very often in your environment is happening, where two people are really clicking and getting along. Yeah. You would have to notice that. Mm-hmm. It's such a small office that there's no way that anyone's ignoring that.
And I feel like we should talk about Pam's awareness of this as well now. Because I'm pretty sure, like, everyone in the office, maybe besides Michael, knows exactly what's going on. Yeah. But I don't know. Pam can't be that unaware.
Yeah, I would imagine she has to know that her and Jim are flirting. Mm-hmm. And she has to know that they're not just friends. Yeah. That there's something more
Yeah.
There are deeper feelings there.
Because, I don't know, there's not many instances where you click so well with someone and it doesn't lead to stronger feelings.
Right.
Like, it's not even, oh, it's because they're a guy and a girl. It's just because, like, anyone in your life, it's, if you click so well with someone, yeah, like, how can you not be aware of what's actually going on?
Right. And you can't, like, if you have natural chemistry with someone, it's hard not to be attracted to them.
Yeah.
That's just a natural thing that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So Pam has to know, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe she knows, but it's a thought that she has that she tries not to address.
Yeah.
And sort of keeps it in the back of her mind instead of acknowledging that it's there.
Yeah, because we've talked about how passive they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I've not been in, like, the same situation, but I've been in a situation where I've been in a relationship with someone and then it kind of feels faded, and then I'm interested in this other person that it feels like it's either just a new flirtatious feeling or, you know, it's something that, like, actual sparks.
Right.
Like, those are the two instances where you question the relationship that you're in to go with another person. And I don't know, I think it's a thought that keeps her awake at night.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That has to be, I bet Jim is the last person she thinks about before she goes to sleep.
Yeah, because when you're faced with a situation like that, it's either, okay, I can keep being in this relationship that I'm with, but there's this other person that brings me a lot more happiness. And it's not that there's not happiness in the relationship she's in, because you see, like, little moments where they're having, like, a real, like, they're a real couple, but yeah, just, like, the overlying fact of, you know, they just don't Roy and Pam are very passive in their relationship because they haven't settled on a date and they don't talk about, like, actually doing that.
Yeah.
They're just like, well, we'll just
engaged.
be engaged forever.
Yeah, it's weird. I might disagree a little bit with, I don't know how passive Roy is. I don't know. But
He's a lot more aggressive in what he's interested in. But I just don't think he's a very romantic type, at least not with Pam.
yeah, I can see that.
Because he has, in the later season, we know that he has a romantic side to him, but you need the right person for that thing to come out. So
True.
I feel like the romance with Pam is just almost non-existent, that he's very passive in the romantic side of things, even if it's just something as simple as, this is the day we're getting married. I think even the thought of all the romanticized part of marriage and planning the wedding and all of that is just too much romance for him, even if it's very a meticulous thing that you have to do. But I don't know, because I agree that he's very aggressive in a lot of situations.
And there's something I noticed in this episode when he sees Jim and Pam, like, holding hands. And I never really noticed, but he is almost controlling. I wonder if he has some kind of, like, that controlling aspect to his personality. Because, like, obviously he's angry.
Yeah.
But then he says, come on, Pam, let's go. Like, or he
tells her to go to the car.
Yeah, he says, go to the car.
And then he kind of stays and gives eye contact to Jim, and then turns and leaves as well.
Right, so he doesn't take any time to try to understand what's happening.
Yeah.
But instead instantly reacts and pretty much commands Pam to go
Yeah.
instead of even going with her and trying to talk to her. So I feel like that was a glimpse into his personality and their relationship, that maybe he's more controlling
Yeah.
than I've sort of given credence to.
Yeah. Because we kind of see that when Pam gets back with Roy. We see a little more insight to, I don't know, he always brings his brother with him to everything. And again, he's not a very romantic type, because if you think to the art show episode when he's like, your art was the best art.
Of all the art. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, he just doesn't have, because honestly, Pam is a very hopeless romantic, where she loves, it doesn't have to be all the time, but just her significant other taking a moment to be like, you are amazing, and this is why I'm in love with you. Just like being reminded of why, you know, she's staying with this person. And I definitely think, I wouldn't say Roy's like physically abusive, but
Yeah,
I feel like he's mentally, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Where because that's a very big insight of Pam knows that she has to do what he says.
Yeah, she doesn't fight back at all or give any kind of glances to say she doesn't want to do that. She just automatically walks out.
Yeah.
And again, it's going back to sort of what you were saying, that Roy is kind of passive in that area of romance.
Yeah.
And Pam is as well. And since no one's addressing it, I think the key to Roy is he probably needs a partner that is willing to call him out on his crap, you know, and say, look, you are not doing this. You need to step up your game. And I imagine that's probably what happened in the later season when he gets married, is that his partner was saying, okay, look, the way you're acting to me it's just not working. So you need to shape up, or we need to get out of this relationship. And if that's what happened, I imagine that it probably woke him up and he was willing to challenge himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely.
I also, sorry, I just had one more insight. There was a deleted scene of Pam talking about the wave runners. And she says that, yeah, Roy just thought it'd be a good idea to buy 2 wave runners. I thought we were saving up for our wedding, but... And so, again, it shows that Roy is more interested in going wave running with his brother. And she even says, one of them was supposed to be for me, but he goes out with his brother a lot and they just race. So
he definitely has like a brotherly love towards his brother that is unmatched to any girl that he's really been with. I'm glad they got out of that relationship.
Yeah. That would have been good.
Yeah. I guess the B plot of this episode is Michael wanting to please the office, which is basically every episode.
Right.
But this is the first introduction to the party planning committee.
Yes.
We finally get to see it for the first time.
Committee.
And I was rewatching it today, and I'd already noted on the newspaper clipping, but I actually read all of the stuff in the column.
Yeah, it's funny.
And it's like, I was reading it and I was like, oh, that's a funny gag towards, you know, this is just a prop that we need. So if you just write in these columns, then it looks like an actual newsletter.
Yeah, I think it's worth, like, if you're listening to this, I think it's worth looking it up and reading the column.
Yeah.
I think it's funny enough to...
Yeah, definitely. But it's weird thinking of it in the context of the show as if that was actually the newspaper clipping. And it's like, wait.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
This is too meta.
They just have a template. They just drop in their picture and give a title.
I was also thinking of, in the party planning committee, like the first scene of them, and they're talking about streamer colors. I thought it would have been more funny if Pam was wearing a green shirt.
I know, because I always thought that Angela said that green is whorish because Phyllis was wearing a green color, but that actually happens in a later season. I just had this confused because she says like Phyllis suggests orange in a later episode.
Yeah.
And I think Angela says the same thing, that orange is like a horrible color.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird. And I wonder why she has already this almost hatred for Pam and anything that she suggests.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it kind of ties back to the office is noticing Jim's interest in her. So maybe she already thinks that they've slept with each other.
Oh yeah, I could see that. And I guess she knows that Pam is in a relationship with Roy, and so she sees Pam flirting with Jim, and she just despises that.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I can think
That
of.
would make sense.
And if I'm remembering correctly in the fire episode, isn't she, or maybe it's Roy that comments on Angela.
Oh yeah, it's when they're out in the parking lot, and Roy's like, that Christian chick or something.
Yeah. It was just the thought that I had that maybe Angela is at least on surface level attracted to Roy.
Yeah, there are other allusions to that as well. That would make sense. So she is maybe almost a little jealous of Pam as well.
Yeah.
And feels like she's wasting what she has by flirting with Jim or almost being unfaithful to Roy in some way.
Yeah. Because it's also kind of an underlying fact as well that Jim's kind of the slob of the office.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of when Michael kind of does an impression of him. And it's kind of like a surfer dude. But everyone laughs and somewhat agrees that that is what he's like. And I feel like Angela is one of those people that full-heartedly agrees with Michael's impression of Jim.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's almost at the very least, Pam has a good thing going, and why would she, I don't know, give that up? Even though I think it's just because Angela hasn't been faced with those things herself. Because I feel like with Angela's later timeline in the season, if she was going through that same thing at the same time as Pam, she'd have a lot more sympathy towards what she's going through. Because their timelines are very similar in a lot of ways.
Like when she has to decide between Andy and Dwight, is that what you're referring to? Or
yeah, like when Andy is engaged to Angela and she's still sleeping with Dwight.
that is kind of weird how there is almost a similarity there.
I don't know. I don't know if it's intentional or if it just makes me think they had this timeline with Jim and Pam and they're like, okay, that went super well, so let's just copy it 2 more times with Dwight and Angela and Michael and Holly.
Yeah, that's true. That is sort of a common tool that they rely on.
Yeah.
Now that you look at it, it's I'm not really against that.
Yeah.
I think if you have something that works, go with it.
Yeah.
I mean, they provide slight variations so that you don't really pick up on it.
Yeah, because Holly and her boyfriend aren't engaged.
Right.
They're just in
That's
a
right.
relationship. But yeah, there are differences to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've noticed that even before we've started the podcast that there's 3 instances where it's basically the same kind of plot where the girl has kind of an interest in one of the guys and then it doesn't really work.
That's weird. I've never noticed that.
And they're with someone else and they really want them back and they eventually do.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, that's cool. I never noticed that. Also, when they're in the planning party meeting, Angela shows more of a soft side with Phyllis when Phyllis suggests something that she doesn't really seem sure of. But Angela's like, no, I think that's a good idea. We could do streamers.
Yeah.
Which is weird to hear her say something like that. You're like, oh, no, we're not doing streamers. But to hear her give like a thoughtful response
Yeah.
to something that she doesn't really like is weird. And it might just be a part of that, still trying to figure out the characters in the first season.
Yeah. Because I don't want to totally disregard the characters that they built in the first season when we go back to them when we're later in the seasons. But I would like to see if there's some kind of difference when she starts antagonizing Phyllis. I wonder if there's... I don't know. I feel like we'll have to actually watch the episodes to think about it, because it's hard to really pinpoint when that starts happening, because you just think it's been happening forever.
And that'll be fun to see how the dynamic changes.
Yeah, because it might just be randomly, but I'm sure we can think of some way that it can
we'll come up with
pinpoint.
something.
Yeah, even if it's just a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll talk about the whole reason they're planning this party is because Michael wants to please the office, and so they decide to throw a party for the next person that has a birthday. And when I was looking up office facts a while ago, it turns out that Meredith's birthday has switched a bunch, because in a later season, when Jim wants to do all those parties on the same it's birthday month, like that doesn't line up because Meredith is included in that birthday month. So
it's not the same.
Yeah, someone did like all the research for when everyone's birthdays are.
I love how deep some people go. It's great.
At least in this episode, it is her birthday in a month. But it is Ryan's birthday.
That's right. It's also Ryan's birthday.
Yeah. I'm glad that the only person he confessed in is Toby, and he knows that he wouldn't say anything.
Right. That is funny.
That's the one person you can tell, and he'll be like, yeah, I won't mention it. I know how everyone acts in the office. I also wanted to talk about Michael's whole character in this episode. I don't know. This isn't much to comment on, but in the world that we live in now, it's funny to hear him compare himself to Donald Trump.
I know, it is really funny. And he says, all Donald Trump does is make people sad. And how true, those are like prophetic words.
That should have been a quote when the elections results came in.
But yeah, it is funny to hear that now that he's the president.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
You're fired.
And it's weird because Michael, there are other times, I'm trying to remember what episode it is, but it's when Michael's getting something in his cabinet in his office, and he has a book by Donald Trump about business. And it's just great, yeah. So this is certainly someone that Michael looks to as a like someone to work towards, I guess.
It is weird, though, because for decades, Donald Trump has been the butt of jokes. Because I looked at a really old comedy special, and it was just like a short clip that someone posted on Twitter. But it was this comedian like forever ago that commented on Donald Trump evicting people from their houses, and that was ages ago.
Wow.
So, he's been this very antagonistic personality forever. And for Michael to be someone who at least compares himself to him, like, I don't know, Michael just doesn't seem the type who would even want to associate his personality with his. Because even if he's not outwardly, or at least the public isn't known of all of the horrible stuff that he's talked about or done. Like, Michael wants to be so loved and cherished. It's very odd to want to be associated with someone who's the butt of jokes, Yeah. And it is kind of like he is that, but he doesn't want to be. And yet he compares himself to being someone that is kind of antagonistic and not particularly pleasant.
Yeah. But I could see Michael would just see all the money that he has.
Yeah, that's the
And
thing.
that's probably the main thing that he's attracted to, is seeing that. Because even he himself admits that, Donald Trump just makes people sad.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I think he definitely sees that this man has a lot of money, and I want to figure out how he has money so that one day I can be a great philanthropist.
There's just so many other people you could... But, whatever makes him happy. Yeah, just all the other stuff that he does throughout the episode he wants ice cream cake and he doesn't care that Meredith's lactose intolerant.
If I was allergic to dairy, I think I'd kill myself.
So it's more like a me party.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what every party turns into. But he wants to be the best note on the card. And as I was rewatching it, I was like, he wrote 3 pages of different things to write on the card.
A lot of rough drafts.
Yeah. Because I noticed how many... I've always noticed that he had papers in his hand, but I never noticed that there were 3 of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how much... I'm convinced that he spent his entire day trying to come up with jokes.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was another thing. Like, I'm always just... How much work does Michael actually do? I don't think he does very much.
Yeah.
He gives probably a lot of his main responsibilities to Dwight, and then signs things.
Yeah.
And maybe makes a few decisions or sales calls. But I'm baffled by how much time he spends on the nonsense in the office.
If you follow the timeline where he gets into work at 5 in the morning, maybe he's productive during that time.
Could be.
He just does all of his work before work starts, and then he
just plays around the rest of the day. That's true. That could be true.
I don't know. I'm trying to give him a little more credit, but I don't think there's that much more credit that you can give him because he really doesn't do much.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't been fired.
Yeah.
Just on that alone. As for just his productivity.
Yeah. I mean, we've kind of talked about it before, and I think it's just he's giving them numbers, so it doesn't matter. And I also wanted to talk go into a bit of a deep dive on this little comment that he says when, I think it's when the party's wrapping up and someone just says, "This is a great party," and then immediately Michael's like, "This isn't my fault." Just comes out of him.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to pinpoint where he has that instinct to just always claim that immediately it isn't his fault.
Yeah.
Because I really don't think he has siblings. So, and I feel like he was coddled as a child. So, I don't know.
Yeah, where did this get built into his personality?
Mm-hmm.
That he would automatically default the blame to someone else.
Yeah. I don't know. All I can think of is Jan. But it also doesn't come off as, I don't know. I can't think of where exactly this would fit. Maybe with teachers. Probably teachers.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. I was thinking of when he's saying, try to concentrate in class when someone's making this fart noise, He's just trying to concentrate and he's making... It just made me think of that. Yeah. It's probably how he acted in school.
Yeah. Yeah, it was probably definitely with his classroom etiquette. But yeah, I just found it interesting how quickly he went around to say, "This isn't my fault. I had no part in this."
Yeah. It could also have to do with his desire not to be associated with anything that is failing. Yeah. Or that his employees would view as negative. Because he only wants to be seen in a positive light. So if it's... Because his whole goal in this episode was to lighten up the mood in the office. And his main goal in writing the best joke was to make everybody laugh so much they forget about downsizing. And they're like, oh my gosh, Michael, you're such a good boss. You told this amazing joke and we forgot about our problems.
It's so weird, though, how the joke that he decided to write is about downsizing.
That's so true.
This will help them get rid of their worries. It's about the very thing I'm trying to make them forget.
Yeah, why did he go with that one? I don't know.
The extent of what we know about Michael, when I heard all the comments that he wrote, I'm just like, that's not even the worst that he could have done.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Because even I was kind of like, oh, it's not super funny, but it's a clever joke about a situation that they're dealing with right now. Mm-hmm. And then other people did jokes about Meredith changing her age. Like Jim was like, you're an accountant, you can fudge the numbers. Uh-huh. It's also weird because I never really thought that Meredith was an accountant. I don't really know what she does. Yeah.
That's weird that she is. Wait, she is an accountant? This is confirmed. Is that what they say?
Well, Jim writes in the card that you're an accountant, just fudge the numbers.
Yeah, it's weird because I've always thought of just Kevin, Oscar, and Angela.
Yeah, that's the desk clump. And in later seasons, they never mention her being an accountant. Right. Which, again, is just they're trying to figure out positions. But then I'm thinking, what does Meredith do in the later seasons? Because we even know that Creed is, like, quality care. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what Meredith does.
Yeah, I don't know. That's weird. What does she do? She just is designated solitaire player.
Yeah, in the later seasons, they never approach her with accountant issues. When Holly is being walked around, they don't introduce Meredith to Holly.
Oh, weird.
They're like, this is the accountant clump, and they don't mention Meredith in that.
Well, in that ethical episode, when Meredith is having sex in exchange for steak gift cards, she was meeting with a supplier or something. I don't know. So what would that be? Maybe she's in charge of like sourcing supplies.
Yeah, they're the middleman.
Right.
So maybe that's her job.
That could be.
Is
Creed's quality care and she sources the materials or something. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I can't think of any other time where they've mentioned what she does.
Yeah. So, I guess if you want to think of it in a timeline sense, they just moved Meredith over to supplying stuff instead.
Yeah, maybe they had to move her over because in season 2, they fire that one guy. Yeah. I don't even remember his name. So maybe she had to take over his position. That's my theory.
We'll say that that's it.
Oh, yeah. Well, just in this episode, we've seen it in previous episodes, but I feel like it's highlighted a little more. Just the small little conversations that Jim and Pam have. Mm-hmm. And I'm blanking on what they're talking about. I guess it doesn't really matter, but I just wonder how important it is to establish small pieces of nuance in between two characters to imply what's happening between them.
I mean, I'm not a professional screenwriter, right? But I have my fair share of at least the beginnings of it. So at the very least, I can kind of wrap my head around the beginnings of writing this show, because I'm kind of in the same boat, I guess you could call it. Mm-hmm. I mean, the main thing that you want to establish between characters is exactly what their relationship was like. And when you're showing these kind of not pointless scenes, but they kind of feel pointless to you on a conscious level.
Right.
But I think if you're just showing these little tidbits of exactly what they do, it subconsciously kind of tells you that this is what's going on, because a lot of screenwriting and just writing in general is you're showing and not telling, where I kind of want to talk about this more in the next episode, but I'll just kind of brush on it right now. It's just The Office is very clever with their editing, and they subconsciously put in your mind, and you might even notice it, but it's still pointed out whether you know it or not, is that Jim wants Pam and wants her to be impressed by, you know, these things that he thinks is impressive, and he wants her to be impressed with it as well.
Right.
And they do that with like all the characters, where it's just they have these tidbits where they do tell you specifically what they're thinking and what's going on. But that's not the whole show, because they could just do a lot more interviews and not make it super situational, and instead just have them more so talk about what's going on. But that wouldn't be fun.
Establish exactly what's happening.
Yeah, that wouldn't be fun for a viewer, because you're just hearing what's going on. And I think that's why some people aren't as interested in documentary types, is because they're mostly just telling you exactly what's happening.
That's true.
Or what has happened. And unless it's an intriguing story, we don't care.
Right.
It's a lot like if you're explaining to someone else what happened in your dream. It's like no one cares about that unless it happened to you, because we don't know what went through your mind and
what that dream really felt like. Or
and that's another thing, is because we're just hearing this blabber of like a dream, it doesn't,
it just feels like information instead of,
and you need to incorporate those visuals and feelings for it to play out. And I think that applies a lot to screenwriting as well, where you need to express visuals and the emotions of something happening rather than just telling you this is what happened. So that's a lot of, it plays a lot into establishing their characters later on. Is just they have a lot, because it's showing exactly what happens in the day-to-day office of that episode, and they cut to people just typing, or people having conversations, and the thing that they wanted to showcase is Jim takes a break from his work and goes and talks to Pam. And I think it just tells us that, they take time out of their day to stop what they're doing and talk to each other.
That's true.
That isn't on a professional level.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you think of it from the perspective of the viewer and what you want the viewer to understand about the characters, it is important to establish those small little pieces that speak to the viewer subconsciously about what's happening and this sort of inner dialogue that's going on. And I couldn't think of what Jim and Pam were talking about, but I remember the smiles that they have on their faces. So I know on a instinctual level that they make each other happy. And it's these kind of like joyous smiles that you don't really see anywhere else in the show. And so I think it makes you as a viewer want to root for Jim and Pam.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that goes for basically anything that you're watching. Is you need to have someone that can express facially how they're feeling. And I think that's why a big reason why The Office works so well is because people can just give a quick glance to something. And I believe it was this episode where Jim is looking down at an interview part and he was just like, she's so perfect, or what did he say?
He just says, like, she's so great, because he's basically saying that
she's so great.
She goes along with the pranks.
Yeah. And before that clip cuts, he like gets out of his head and he looks towards the door. And that just tells you so much about this feeling that he has. He feels this raw emotion, and then he's like, you shouldn't be feeling this. And then he looks towards the door to make sure that no one else heard this confession.
And it's not reality.
Yeah. But yeah, just those tiny little glances that people do, whether it's just looking towards the camera with just this dull face, or, you know, these insightful moments where they're scared of having these emotions being broadcasted or at one point heard by someone else in the office. It's jarring for them.
Yeah, they're a lot more weightier than you'd give them credit for.
Yeah.
They provide a lot more to the sort of the landscape of the episode.
Yeah. And that's why I think it works so well. Because even if we don't notice it, we still feel it. And it doesn't even matter what they're talking about, because we can just understand kind of what they're going through. And we don't even need to hear them say it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be it for this episode of The Alliance. And next episode, we're talking about basketball.
Yeah, basketball.
So, yeah, we'll see you next episode.